of the larger fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love. The COVID-19 pandemic has irrevocably shaped how connections are formed in congregations across the United States and the world. The Church of the Larger Fellowship is committed to being a resource within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine Quest to our online community hub and our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison. The CLF supports the ministries of those who hold target identities: Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism; Trust, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together; and Drum, Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, just to name a few. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed, even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message. Happy New Year.
Hey.
Hi, DC.
How are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy
Welcome
New Year.
to Voices of Unitarian Universalism. I am Aisha Hauser, and I come to you from the land of the Coast Salish people, also known as Seattle, Washington, where it is gray, and that cannot be a surprise to anyone listening. DC, how are you? Where are you?
I am okay. I am DC Fortune. I am in central Pennsylvania on the historic land of the Susquehannock people in the central Susquehanna River Valley, which means not much, but if you draw a big X across Pennsylvania, I'm sort of where the X is.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Right
Nice.
in the middle. Yep.
That's a really great way of geographically having us understand where you are, giving us
it's horse and buggy country out here. It's kind of beautiful and quaint, and right now cold.
Cold. Did you get snow?
We did over the weekend, but it lasted, a few days.
Interesting. So I do also so it's DC and I today. Happy New Year. Reverend Dr. Michael Tino and Christina Rivera are the co-leads of the Church of Larger Fellowship are out today. So it is our show for the new year. We're kicking it off, DC. So we are left unsupervised, which is always one of my favorites. I want to invite those thank you who are in our audience right now live. Please feel free to ask us questions. We have some things we want to talk about, and it's almost like a question box, which will be fun. So if you have anything you want to ask me or DC, please feel free. Things you've been wondering about, or something you want to, kind of watch us discuss, let us know. So I don't know. What do we have for UU Roundup? I feel like
search season. It's search
season. Say more about what that means.
It is search season. Search season for Unitarian Universalist ministers and congregations is sort of like I don't know, Match.com meets the NFL draft.
No, not Match.
Like the congregations create a profile and they talk about their budgets and they talk about their people and where they are and why they're a great congregation. And ministers create a profile that has all of their, qualifications and samples of their sermons and all that stuff. And then there's some weird sort of clicking to share information, and then they meet at Starbucks in public, and then
not Starbucks because we're boycotting Starbucks, but
but then they go through this whole process. They
right.
go through this whole process, and we are in the first interview part of all of that, where people are doing like congregations.
So at this point, they've done the match process. They've swiped right, and
they swiped right.
A heart came up. You can tell.
Right. Yep. Right. Little heart came up. And what's happening now is that congregations are interviewing the first slug of candidates. Like they'll go through all the applicants, and suppose just for round numbers, a congregation got 10 people who said, I'm interested in talking to this congregation. The search committee will look through that and decide how many of those people they want to interview. Mm-hmm. And they'll arrange now Zoom. It used to be phone interviews and other stuff, but now it's all on Zoom. So they'll do a Zoom interview, and then they'll further narrow that pool down and invite people to come like for a weekend visit so they can check them out and kick the tires and that kind of thing. And then later on in like April, the congregations have narrowed down their first, second, third choices. The ministers have narrowed down their first, second, third choices. And then it all goes into this giant matrix thing at the mothership at the UUA. And on a particular date, congregations are allowed to ask ministers if they would like to be their candidate for ministry, which is where the NFL draft comes in, because it's a single day that you get to ask people. Like you go through this whole thing, and then on that particular day, you do the thing. So, but it's in the early stages of that. So right now, ministers have swiped right, and they're waiting for calls, or they're scheduling interviews and trying to figure out, ministers are trying to figure out where they want to go, and congregations are trying to figure out who they'd like to invite. And it's a real sort of up in the air liminal space that can be very unsettling for both ministers and congregations.
It feels this process. I wonder if it might be time to, update it from whenever, because it just feels so, I'm not going to say antiquated. I think somewhere along the line, somebody got their feelings hurt at a different time of year. And so this process was in place to make it look fair. But I think all it is anxiety producing, frankly. Watching it, granted, I have not been in this process, and the way the CLF called and even went through the search process was not even a little bit the same way, which I love.
Right. Well, the CLF's a very different animal.
Well, it is, and why? I mean, I think so for those of you who don't know, who are watching or listening, the Church of Ledger Fellowship search team put out a request for proposals, and they said, here's what we're looking for. Please send us your proposal. They were intentionally looking for teams, not necessarily teams of 3, but that is, who they ended up calling, Chris, Michael, and I. And so I feel like, imagine, because here's the thing. We had to do a lot of, everybody who applied, I'm going to guess, I know we did, researched the congregation and had to make a plan. So it wasn't just that they were swiping right on our cute little faces. It was, I know people are reading packets, but I'm simplifying it a little. It was, okay, here's who you are. Here's what we bring. Here's what our vision is. And here's what we think can happen. So it was a much more, and it wasn't a weekend. It was over weeks. And they narrowed down. And so it feels like, I wonder if congregations did an RFP where it's like, here's who you like, where there's a lot more research and intentionality and beyond the, let's meet at the locally owned coffee shop, metaphorically speaking.
Right. Well, I would argue that there's a fair amount of that does happen, with good interim work, the congregations will spend a couple of years figuring out who they are, what they want to do, what they're looking for in a minister, and and when they offer their packet, they'll say, we're looking for a minister who has these sorts of skills, who can help us build in this particular direction. And then the ministers come in with, I have these sorts of ideas. These are my, like, how I'd like to do ministry. So it's sort of like that. But the thing is, the nature of ministry is so weird. If somebody's in search and their current congregation knows, their ability and their authority to do ministry is shot.
Right.
Right. Because the people will just because then there's that whole like feeling of abandonment. And what are you going to tell us? You're leaving anyway. And
that's why it's so secretive, right? Like it's not.
Yeah. And it's hard.
Open.
It's hard, especially for ministers who pride, like myself, on honesty and transparency and authenticity. It forces those ministers to sort of be secretive and keep secrets from the congregation they're serving. And that's really hard, and I don't like it, but I don't see a different structure through which to make this happen. So I don't know. But anyway, so that's going on, but that's not what we're talking about today. So, but just hold all those folks, in kindness, because, ooh, baby, it's a bonkers thing. Yeah.
It is a bonkers thing. Someone commented it is stressful for all involved.
Yes.
Erin Marie, welcome, and Karen Richter, welcome, and Larry Works. I'm just reading out the names of folks who made some. Hold on one second. I need to turn my bathroom light off because it's flashing, and I don't know why. It's freaking me out. Hold on.
My bathroom light does not flash. That's weird. Are you okay?
It was the ghost of, I don't know. I think it was half. I think I didn't shut it all the way, and it started yelling at me.
Okay.
Right. What's been alive for me right now, thinking for a while is, okay, I'm going to start with this notion of revenge, right? So a few months ago, we had Rabbi
Vengeance. Yes. Vengeance.
Yes. Vengeance. Rabbi Danya Rutenberg was on the show. She wrote Repentance and Repair. Here's what's interesting. She was on the show
just before
everything happened.
Yeah.
In Gaza and in Israel, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the last 5 minutes of the show, because being who I am, I said something about Israel and being a settler colonial state. Mm-hmm. And she took exception to it and said, no, here's all the reasons why it's not. I really would love to follow up on that conversation now, given what's happened. So October 7th happened. Yes, it was heinous. And what's happened since is the systematic, and this is now, you all can, whoever's watching this, who is poised to disagree with what I'm about to say, please Google all of this. Officials in the Israeli government have been publicly saying on the news, not caught on hot mics, on the news, I don't care about the Palestinians. They were called, I'm not even going to repeat the heinous names they were called, but they're clear that they're wanting to annihilate the people of Gaza. Or at one point, Netanyahu was moving them to the Congo. I'm sorry, what? So here's this interesting thing. The unintended consequence, one of them, there are many, and there will be for years and years and decades to come, but one of them that I am almost positive the current ultra-right-wing Israeli government that is in power right now did not expect is how many people in the world, as soon as I think, it didn't even happen, I would say the first couple of weeks, it started happening when we hit week 3, 4, 5, 6. People started asking in the world, why did this happen an explanation is not an excuse. It is terrible what happened. And history didn't start on October 7th. People started Googling the Nakba of 1948. People started reading about how all of this came to happen before 1948. And so the more people in the world started understanding what continues to go on, how much the Palestinians' lives are controlled by Israel. People in the West Bank and Gaza do not have a right to vote. They have their water constricted, restricted food. I mean, Gaza right now is under a genocide, but the West Bank also. So this is all to say there's this, the idea that this genocide and this revenge and this wanting annihilation is somehow going to bring peace and safety to Israel is not accurate. Yeah. It's not going to happen. And that's the sad part. And you know what? Jewish people should be safe anywhere and everywhere in the world.
Yes.
That's the part that's also hurts my heart. It's like, Israel's the only place you're going to be safe. That's debatable given the Israeli government's continuing this genocide and wanting to annihilate all of the Palestinian people.
Right.
But why should everywhere in the world should be safe for Jewish people and for Muslim people, right?
Right. Right. So as somebody who is white, who is formerly Catholic, now Protestant, has never been to that area. My understanding of this situation is painfully theoretical, right? The most I can say is I have a friend who lives in Tel Aviv. And when this thing happened, she was incredibly traumatized. It was October 7th happened. Mm-hmm. And I have this friend whose son came back from where he was living in the U.S. to re-enlist. He was in the reserves, but to get back active, right? And I can see with my own eyes what's happening in Gaza. It does meet all the technical definitions of genocide. And we've got two populations that are generationally traumatized. And I feel very limited in my ability to speak with any authority on this. The Hebrew people for thousands and thousands of years have been like fantastically unpopular with various folks throughout history and have struggled for survival. Yes. And Muslim people, since Muhammad, have been, everybody takes their turns being in power and being out of power.
Well,
let me just get through this thought, please. And what happened when, as my God, you'd think we'd learn by now, after World War II, when the US and the UK carved up a piece of real estate without the consent of anybody living there and created this thing, like this is just England's model perpetuated again in the 20th century. After, many, many centuries of doing this and failing, you'd think somebody would know. But, and I think that puts the U.S. in a particularly ick situation, because to acknowledge the wrongness of that is to acknowledge the wrongness of so much of our foreign policy, of our everything, right? And I watch these two traumatized nations, meaning a vast community, right? The nation of Israel, the nation of Islam, that and I see two groups of people who, for the most part, don't hate each other, being slaughtered by their governments. I mean, oh God, I am an American, and I am so far removed, and I can see the global stuff happening, right? And that's why, I was impressed that South Africa filed charges with the International Court for war crimes and charges of genocide. My Irish heritage was a little bit thrilled to see that Ireland joined in with that. And I think it's fascinating because both of those countries are among some of the most recent to get out from under the boot heel of England, which has, a centuries-old habit of taking other people's stuff and then killing them. So, I mean, at the risk of, and someone like me, I don't want to be called anti-Semitic, right? I think Jewish people should be, like you said, safe everywhere they are. Like, just don't be a dick to people, right? Don't hurt somebody because they're Jewish. Don't be mean to them. Don't be an asshole. And the institution that is the Israeli government is doing horrible things quite intentionally and with malice aforethought. And that needs to be addressed. And this is one of those things where it's really hard to separate the people from the behavior, right? Like, this behavior is criminal. Mm-hmm. Are Jews criminals? No, not like that. But this behavior, this institutional governmental behavior, is terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it might be South Africa and Ireland. And was there somebody else that joined in with that?
I hope so. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know, but I get the feeling there was. But it was just, it's so heartbreaking. Like, my dear colleague here, the rabbi of the local synagogue, just went to Israel for 4 days because it was less stressful than being here.
It's interesting. What I've heard anecdotally is that rabbis are having a lot of the similar problems that UU ministers are having, not knowing how to talk about this, because it seems to be, and it's not across the board. There are plenty of folks who are, Jewish Voices for Peace is multi-generational, which I found out recently that the Anti-Defamation League considers them anti-Semitic, Jewish Voices for Peace. But that is where, like, the indoctrination of allegiance to an entity, no matter what they do, is clearly problematic. Someone commented, humanism, not 2,000-year-old religions, not nationalism is the route you should be taking. I think here's the thing. People who, I grew up very indoctrinated into the Muslim faith, like completely, I'm going to use the word for me, brainwashed. But what made me start questioning it before even I was 20 and I met my Jewish boyfriend who became my Jewish husband, and I have 2 Jewish children. What it is a deeply,
Your audio just quit, hon.
It's tied to your very survival.
I can now. It just went spotty. Start back with you were just getting into the indoctrination, and then
the indoctrination of religion, and when you're surrounded, everyone around you believes exactly the same thing. It's your world. It shapes your worldview, right? And so what changed it for me is that I grew up in New Jersey, and growing up in New Jersey in a town with, at that time in the 70s and 80s, had very, I think we might have been the only Egyptian family, and maybe there might have been actually a Palestinian family, and that was it. We didn't even really interact with them. Their children were younger. But what started me questioning what I was being indoctrinated into was knowing Catholics, knowing Protestants, knowing people who I was like, I don't understand why God's going to send all these people to hell. It just wasn't computing.
Right.
So it was proximity, what Brian Stevenson talks about, proximity to folks who it's easy to otherize, to make the other folks that you don't know, that you've never met. And then on top of it, if you are told that of whatever the other group, whatever the other group is, that group hates you, wants to destroy you, you should be fearful of them.
Right.
That is a deep, and then on top of it, if you come from a lineage where you are part of the group, one of the 11 million people that were targeted by the Nazi Germany, right? So 11 million people died in the Holocaust, 6 million of them Jewish. So there is that deep generational trauma based on historical fact that folks, of course, are activated. October 7th happens, and because this ultra right-wing government has been wanting to annihilate the Palestinians, they've been clear about that for decades.
Right.
Now they see this as their chance. And so getting back to what we started with, this idea of this bloodlust revenge that the Israeli government is very openly talking about, the tragic irony is it is destabilizing the region. It is, and here's the thing, the more people learn about, again, the entire history, the more they are on the side of Palestine and Gaza and wanting peace, because the math ain't mathin' of how all this came to be. And the United States is not in a pickle. The United States is absolutely intentionally supporting genocide. This is the United States government, not the United States people. We've been shutting down highways. You go, activists, it's great. The United States government and Joe Biden, and I'm fine with his nickname, Genocide Joe, is very much saying, I don't give a fuck about the Palestinians. It's beyond it. I am so angry about that, and it's disgusting. And that man has children and grandchildren, might have great grandchildren. How the fuck do you sleep at night that you are? Because he's the only country that can get them to fucking stop tomorrow is the United States.
Yeah, yeah, and and this is one of those like. He inherited, 80-year legacy.
He's always been supportive of Israel, DC.
I know, and he's a very staunch institutionalist. He's an incrementalist, and that supports the people who are in power.
I think you're being kind, and he's intentionally against the Palestinians. That it's not his. This isn't him. I hear what you're wanting to get at, but this is not. His hands aren't tied. He could help change this. He doesn't want to. He doesn't fucking want to. That's the part that's gross about Joe Biden. I don't give a fuck that he's 92 however fuck old he is. Like, I am so grossed out by him.
I hear that.
112. This is a very intentional. I've heard the speeches from early 90s. Like, he is very clearly, I don't give a fuck about the Palestinians. And mind you, so was Hillary Clinton. So was the fucking darling of white women in this country. Hillary Clinton also fucking hated the Palestinians. I'm calling it the way it is. Like, I'm an Arab. And I used to tell people when I'm going to tell story time. When she was running and it was the primaries and Bernie was, go like wildfire. And I would say, Arabs hate Hillary Clinton. You know how many times white women ministers were like, oh, you have internalized misogyny. Whether or not I do does not change the fact that Arabs fucking hate Hillary. And you know what happened in the Michigan primary? And all these people were pearl clutching and surprised that the white Jewish man in the state that has the highest population of Arabs in this fucking country beat Hillary Clinton. People were surprised. They did the Home Alone. And I'm like, I fucking told you. There's no.
Yeah.
Shock to me. They literally chose the white Jewish man. Oh, this is all to say. I don't want to forget to name. Thank you. Oh, and Lucretia is behind our chalice today. She will be our technical person for forever, hopefully forever.
So she's our new techie person. I haven't met this person yet.
Oh, you haven't met Lucretia?
No.
Oh, Lucretia Williams was a learning
Oh,
fellow
wait.
for 2 years. Yeah, Lucretia
Oh,
Williams.
that Lucretia. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So Lucretia is our tech person for the VUU and worship on Sunday. So welcome, Lucretia, and thank you for. We are so excited to have you back amongst us. There is a national march in Washington, D.C. And San Francisco for Palestine, January 13th, this Saturday. So those of you who are so inclined, please don your watermelon shirts and your keffiyehs, and just, here's the thing. If we do not affirm the humanity of everyone and affirm the humanity of Palestinians, we're in so much fucking trouble. Yes, there's a genocide in the Sudan and Congo. There's shit going on. And this is something so incredibly blatant and intentional. And the entire world, the people of the world, are wanting to stop this genocide. And here's what I'll also tell you. Yes, are there anti-Semitic fuckers out there? Of course.
Yes.
I think more people than not don't want to make it. I certainly don't want to make anti-Semitism worse. My two favorite people in the world identify as Jewish, my children. So let's not make anti-Semitism worse by any stretch. And we need to make sure that the Israeli government is stopped, because they are homicidal and absolutely do not give a shit, and are on record not giving a shit about Palestine.
Right. Yeah. And this, again, oh God, I had a professor in college who once said, and this just haunts me, that the people get the government they deserve.
I mean,
that makes you take a deep breath, doesn't it? Right? Like, holy shit. Like, did we deserve 4 years of that fuck? Actually, we kind of did, because enough people checked out and didn't care and didn't participate that bad shit happened.
Was that a white guy? Was that a white guy who said that?
I don't know. Well, my professor was quoting somebody. I'm going to guess it was probably a white guy. Yeah.
Well, here's why. George Carlin has said it. My thing is this. I think that if our system, I'm going to talk about the United States, there is so much voter disenfranchisement. There has always been such a since the founding of this settler colonial state, there has never been truly representative government that included indigenous people, enslaved Africans, Black people, white women got the right to vote, and then not women of color until many years later. So that notion, I don't think applies, because especially when we're talking about systems that are deeply rooted in violent extractive capitalism and oppression. So what's interesting is in the 2016 election, when the hate pumpkin was coming into power, all this, and then won, white liberals started freaking out. And I'm like, and then started saying, this isn't my country. Sure as shit is. Oh, now that it's going to impact you? Oh, you didn't think Roe v. Wade was going to fucking get overturned, even though that's literally what they've been saying for the past 50 years? I'm sorry, what? So, the fuck. So I think I don't believe that Black people deserve way better. Indigenous people, descendants of enslaved Africans in this country deserve a better fucking government, but they have never been able to participate in the same way that white people have. So I don't.
Okay. Thank you. I won't.
Yeah.
I will. Yes, I will. I will not use that thing again in that illustrative way. I may use it as a sort of a example of white people being oblivious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We have a question.
So, Is supporting a two-state solution anti-Palestine?
There's a journalist named Jonathan Katz who I follow on TikTok, who's incredibly brilliant, was bureau chief somewhere in the Middle East. I'm forgetting where. He's Jewish. He is a practicing Jew, incredibly knowledgeable. And he gave the best answer to the very idea. He is against the two-state solution, which made me go, huh? But he said, when he brought up a map, and he said, it's impossible at this point. How could that even happen based on how the settlements are happening? Okay. So his idea, and I'm quoting Jonathan Katz, and it's the idea that comes closest to what I think maybe could happen, is everyone on that land, Israel/Palestine, everyone in that strip, be given the right to vote. Everyone, Palestinian, Israeli, instead of a two-state solution. Whatever, if it stays Israel, if it's Israel/Palestine, whatever people want to call it, but actually everyone learn to live together. Because
that's what
those of you who want to, do you know John Oliver? He's on, you can watch on YouTube. He does in 20 minutes the best synopsis of the Israel-Palestine, which is remarkable in 20 minutes. But one of the things he ends with, there are two fathers, one Jewish, one Palestinian, one Israeli, one Palestinian, whose children each died from someone from the other one,
right?
Hamas and the IDF killed the other. So the Israeli father said, we are either going to learn to live in peace above this land, or all of us be dead under it. And that is the fucking truth. Is Israel's plan to annihilate every fucking single Palestinian? Yes. How the hell is that going to work? And even if you succeed, how do you think that's going to play out in the world?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So Marlene Jones asks, I really like this new thing where we can read the questions.
I know.
This is very fun. So Marlene Jones asks, what would be a U.S. policy that is not anti-Palestine? What would that U.S. policy look like?
Well, first we stop genocide and we let people have water and their basic human needs met.
Also, stop shipping arms, selling arms.
I mean, could we stop? Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Could we stop?
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson. Thank you, Laurie Stone, Director
of
Technology for
Yeah.
CLF. It was Thomas Jefferson, the slave-owning rapist.
Right.
Said,
yes. Okay. Yep.
The government you elect is
good
the
enough. Thank you, Laurie. Got it.
And Thomas Jefferson at the time was only white landowning men who voted. So
right. Okay.
Thank you, Laurie.
So let's look at Marlene's question. What would be a U.S. policy that is not anti-Palestine? What would that look like?
So it's actually way more multifaceted than that, because one of the things that Palestine has served to do what's happening in Gaza, the genocide, is radicalize the world. And people who are oppressed all over the world include, the Irish. We started with them, South Africans who understand what it is to be deeply in systems of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
It is a globe. Okay. What would it look like to center the oppressed of the world who are being the most impacted by climate change,
mm-hmm.
who are being the most impacted by violent extractive capitalism. So I actually wouldn't just isolate what's going on with the Palestinians. I would actually say what would happen if our foreign policy genuinely centered those who have been most adversely affected by our fucking policies, our foreign policies, which right now are trash.
Oh, this is interesting because it just hit me. And this is what Rabbi Ruttenberg was talking about when it comes to atonement, right? Before you can actually say, I'm sorry, you have to acknowledge the shit you've done and make systemic changes to your own self and your own behavior.
Yes.
So you have to acknowledge, we, the United States, would have to acknowledge our role historically in this, and we can't even get people to teach actual U.S. history.
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to get an entire nation to acknowledge that we've been genocidal assholes?
Yeah.
Since jump, you know?
Exactly.
And so that's the really deep, difficult work.
Deep.
That I think is challenging for individuals. It's more challenging for small groups. It's incredibly challenging for larger, like the larger the group gets, the harder it is, because I mean, anybody who's worked in congregational life knows that 2 or 3 grumpy people can throw a wrench in the whole works, you know? But we've got to have, not unlike Germany had after World War II, a truth and reconciliation. That's what we need, is a truth and reconciliation system for the globe.
Yeah. Yes.
Where the U.S. has to stand there and hear other nations say, you did this to us and you did that to us. And yes, it was 400 years ago, but baby, I'm still in poverty because of the things you put in motion.
Ooh.
Right? We need a global truth and reconciliation program, and that's not going to happen because the people in power make the rules.
Well, yes, and here's
Okay.
what. So first, I want to lift up Boston person. Someone said, "See David Kurtzer's trilogy on church's role in the horrifying history of anti-Semitism." Listen, the Catholic Church has helped fan the flames of anti-Semitism for centuries.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yep,
and then Lucretia said, "Yep, Nelson Mandela spoke extensively. So did Malcolm X about the connection between the Palestinian cause and South Africa and what was going on." So absolutely. So DC, here's what I'll tell you. You know why our government wants to so desperately get rid of TikTok? Because TikTok has become a wildfire of activism now. Absolutely, there's fuck shit on there. There is nonsense on TikTok, but there is also, my feed is all about, it is Jewish people who are advocating for peace and ceasefire now. Mm-hmm. It is obviously Palestinian activists. It's Black women activists. It is Book Talk has been amazing. And books have been selling out on the history of the region, on Palestine, on Israel, right? And so I actually think, because empires fall, monarchs fall. Like, it's not that the history of the world before TikTok, nothing has stayed stagnant, right?
Right.
So even though what the scenario you presented may not happen in the way, I think it's happening in the form of social media, where we're getting live reports from Gaza. I'm following Hassan. I'm following Martez. I'm following, journalists who are the age of my children, 23 and 26-year-olds, really, who are there. You could hear the bombs that are going on 24/7. There is this, and that's psychological warfare too. We haven't even talked about that. Yeah, it is. In Gaza. Yep. So I think this reckoning is happening simultaneously while these destructive governments are in power. I didn't know. Here's something I learned on TikTok. The Sami people of Norway, the Sami people are the indigenous people in Norway who have been fighting to keep the North Sea from being drilled. And my understanding, I think they voted against it for now. So maybe we've held off on fucking up the earth for a few more years. But the people who are oppressed, people indigenous to Hawaii, have been posting about Palestine. Irish, I'm following all Irish TikTok. I'm on Irish TikTok from Ireland. Again, South Africa, people all over the world who are connecting the dots from with their oppression to intersectionality. And so, they did vote in favor. Oh, I was wrong. Damn it. Norway voted to drill in the North Sea. Fuck. What the hell, Norway? And you know what? I'm never holding up Norway. I don't give a shit that you have universal health care. That's bullshit.
I think they also get swords when they get their PhD.
Probably.
Is it Norway or Sweden? One of them gets swords.
So I think, to get back to what you were saying about, that's why they want to get rid of TikTok, because it is a place of deep activism. They don't give a fuck about our information. Mark Zuckerberg sells it. It's only because it's owned by China. Right. So I think it's happening.
it's one of those, like, every time there's a new art form, the powers that be try to control it and muzzle it and change it and stop it, because always artists and poets and musicians and writers are the ones that tell the truth. You know, one of the first signs of totalitarianism is when people go after artists.
Yep.
And I'm remembering, God, this is because I'm old, right? The NEA debates over Mapplethorpe, over Jesse Helms got his knickers in a bunch because he didn't want gay art being funded by getting funded by the NEA, and that was, in our time, that was the first significant blow to the arts.
Yeah.
In this particular chunk of U.S. history.
This was in the early 90s or the 80s?
Oh, that would have been 80s, because I was thinking, either Reagan or Bush 1 was still president. So I'm thinking 86, 8, 9, somewhere in there. Yeah. All right.
Oh, wow.
Larry Works tells us that the Sami, which are in Norway, you said, yes? Norway?
Yes.
Sweden?
And probably in both areas.
Right.
Yeah.
Are experiencing a tribal split due to the Ukrainian invasion. Russian Sami leaders have sided with Putin, likely for self-preservation reasons.
Wow, Larry, that's interesting. I didn't know that. It's pronounced Sami. Yeah,
Sami, I'm sorry.
I had no idea there were indigenous people in Norway. Now I know. I'm like, oh, look at that. And
every place has indigenous people until eventually England or Russia comes and invades them.
Yeah, exactly. When empire, and then what added to empire that made it worse was capitalism. So now you have a marriage, like from hell, of imperial thinking, settler colonialism, and violent extractive capitalism.
Right. Yeah. And this is just a little aside. I remember, I've only ever seen this ad once. It was beautiful. It was a TV ad, and it, had those glorious sort of flyover shots of Ireland, with the green things and the stone walls and the sheep and the beautiful stuff. And the voiceover said, when the Vikings came, they loved it. When the Gauls came, they loved it. When the Romans came, they loved it. When blah, 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 blah. And it was from the Irish Tourism Bureau. And it said, and we're sure that when you come, you'll love it too. And you'll be the first of the lot we invited. Right?
I love the Irish.
Right? Yeah. And like I said, I only saw it once. And I was just like, oh my God, somebody's brilliant. And of course, like, that totally got censored or taken off the air or whatever. But oh my word, you'd be the first of the lot we invited.
You're the only, I mean, this and it's something, we have about 10 minutes left. I thought we were going to be done early, DC. We have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Come on. You and I get together and start talking. You think we're going to be, we'll be done in a half hour. Yeah. No.
It's too meaty, right? It's rich, full of tofu for our vegan friends. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about for a while, since, for many, many years, especially as a faith leader, is like how I'm not into the business of changing people's minds, because there's no such thing. Rather, how do we invite people into, and now I'm going to keep it United States centered, because we have the least kind of community oriented thinking in general. This is not everybody, but I think, how do we inspire white people in the United States who are not used to community thinking to think that about the interconnected web, like more so than, because right now that is what is going to save us. Continuing this isolation isn't going to save us. And I also just want to say real quick, we have never mind. We're not on, we don't, anyway. So I don't know, DC, like, how do we invite. Here's the invitation for especially white people who did not grow up, who grew up basically the United States being set up in terms of media images. It's changing now. It's slowly changing in terms of media images, especially TikTok has changed the game in terms of connection and who gets lifted up. Mm-hmm. But to say to folks, our destinies are tied together, whether or not we like it. Right. So how do we affirm humanity? How do we center humanity much more explicitly, intentionally, community care, love as core? And I'm not talking Hallmark, I'm talking agape, what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, his day is this weekend, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. How do we do that?
That I don't know. I know with my congregation that I serve, we've been doing January's Soul Matters theme is liberating love, right? And so we had some really great conversations this past week about who do we love, and can we love people who are doing terrible things? And that's really hard. And how do we see the humanity in others who are doing terribly hurtful things? And it's not easy. No. It's not easy. And it was interesting. We went this really delightful, intense, wandering gamut of, we want to lift up those who are oppressed. We want to stop bad people from hurting folks. Okay. And then, we have the usual assortment of white people who are like, yeah, but nonviolence. And then, then there's this conversation about, well, nonviolence sort of favors the ones with power. Right. And even Gandhi said it's okay to use violence if what you're doing is stopping a powerful person from hurting a less powerful person. Right. Okay. So, I mean, it's just, it's not a linear thing, right? It has to happen on all different kinds of levels. So we have these conversations with our neighbors and with our families and with our friends and with our communities, but we also have them within ourselves. And that's really hard. Yeah. Right? Like if it were easy, we'd be doing it. Well, like it's like exercise, if it was, if it wasn't, if I enjoyed it, I'd be shaped a lot differently than I am,
What we have to think about is what gets in the way. And what gets in the way is our wounds and trauma and conditioning.
Right.
What wound, right? So when where trauma plays into it is being activated. So when we were talking, we began earlier talking about the generational trauma that's been activated in folks.
Yes.
And I know when I get triggered, as soon as I'm activated, nothing is coming through.
Nothing. I'm
in fear, and my wound has been opened.
Your amygdala has just shut down. Everything else is just nothing. Right? Nothing gets in.
So trauma, wound, fear, and conditioning. So the conditioning part comes in that when I'm activated, what have I been conditioned to understand the world to be? Where can I find safety?
Right.
And so I feel like a big part of my post-divorce journey has been, and the micro is macro, is healing, is shadow work. So healing the parts of myself that has been, frankly, has been activated and too afraid to heal for various reasons, right?
Right. Sure. Yeah.
There's a collective, like you talked about reconciliation and truth telling. This country needs to do when I talk about reparations, it's about telling the truth.
Right. Okay.
About what happens to the indigenous population, which is exactly what's happening in Gaza.
Yep.
It happened to the indigenous people here, and descendants of and enslaved Africans. If we can when we tell the truth about those things, we could start healing, because then there's a way forward. How do we affirm? How do we move forward? What does repair look like? Because we can envision a better world, because shitty ideas seem to let us bomb children, let us cage them, let us keep water from people, and suddenly there are other people agreeing. But when somebody says, let's take care of each other. That's fucking
Whoa,
unrealistic.
what the fuck? Hey, don't be doing that.
The fuck?
Right?
Like,
What? You're being nice to people? Oh, stop that.
That's unrealistic. You're naive.
Yeah, that Jesus guy was just too fucking woke, man.
Oh, okay, we have 4 minutes. Can I have one pet peeve that I have to end with? Please indulge me.
Oh, good.
Jesus was a Palestinian Jew. Now,
Yep.
I heard, online, somebody, and it was UU ministers who started sharing, that is a dangerous notion. Is it though? It's dangerous. You know why it's dangerous? Because we're fucking humanizing the Palestinians. I'm sorry. No, it isn't dangerous. And it's a metaphor, and it's not you. We're now starting to get historically accurate as you use. I'm sorry, what? we're now like historically accurate with the Bible as Unitarian Universalists? In what fucking world? No. It is not dangerous. The
Don't make
point
me
of
choke
saying
on my coffee, Aisha.
the point of saying Jesus was a Palestinian Jewish man who wanted people to be better Jews. He did not, sorry, Catholic Church, he did not come here to bring a new religion.
No, he didn't.
Wanted people to be better Jewish people. And the Jewish faith is fucking beautiful. It's a beautiful faith that centers personal responsibility and accountability, justice in the world, that it's all our responsibilities to love each other and bring justice in the world. Right. So please stop that. If you're a UU faith leader especially, don't share shit like it is dangerous to say, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Because the only danger is that we're going to humanize brown people.
Okay. So
that was my
funny Irish story about Jesus. About Jesus. Well, see, now the town I grew up in the community I grew up in was very Irish Catholic. Very, 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 very Irish Catholic. My aunt had a party once at her house. There were no fewer than 12 Marys and 8 or 9 Elizabeths or Margarets. I mean, for real. Like Mary, Elizabeth, Margaret, Peggy, Maggie, Betsy. Oh my God, right? So we're having dinner at this friend's house, and she told me this woman, she was grandmother for her 2 little children who were Megan and Patrick, of course, right? Of course. And Patrick came home from school. He was about 6, and he was very upset. And he said, Nana, sister today told us that Jesus was a Jew. Now, in the life of a Catholic child, this is alarming. This is really, really mind-blowing, traumatic stuff for a 6-year-old who, at that Catholic church in Massachusetts, at that Catholic school in Massachusetts, they still had to learn the counties of Ireland. Okay.
Oh
right. And this is like 30 years ago. All right. So it was in the 1900s, almost 2000s. So, and she's like, and she said what every Irish Catholic kid I've ever known has heard. Well, yes, dear, that's all they had then.
No. Okay. On that note.
Okay. But I mean, that's the indoctrination we had.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That was, I have not seen Derry Girls. Somebody asked me.
It's so good. Oh my God. You have to see Derry Girls. It takes place in Ireland. It's so good.
So, but, and keep in mind that I was a little IRA activist at like 5. When Mrs. Boyle, my kindergarten teacher, you'd think Boyle, she'd have known better, instructed us to color this thing green and that thing orange, and they were next to each other. I knew that I could not do that. I was 5. I knew that I could not do that. So I colored one of them green because that's cool. And the other one I colored red, but I colored it light. Maybe she wouldn't notice. She comes along and she says, hey, that's wrong. Why did you do that? And I said, because you should never put the orange and the green together.
DC, we have to end, but I love you. We got to come back to your stories of
Irish childhood. Yeah.
Childhood.
So, yeah.
That's the indoctrination is real. This has been a very fast hour. Thank you, DC.
Right? It's been a lot of fun. And we've covered some deep stuff. And I think we've really tried, at least I have really tried, to do it with tenderness.
Yeah.
And without malice.
Yeah.
As much as possible, to call out truth and to say everybody in this clusterfuck is human.
Center the humanity of people, because that is only the only way we're going to get through this.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Amen and Ashe. Thank you, DC. Thank you, Lucretia.
Right.
Thank you, everyone who joined us and who commented and let us know you're here. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Let's see if they let us do this again, huh?
We'll see. I won't be here next week, but yes, hopefully.
All right.
I'll be here the week after.
Happy New Year, everybody. Great to be back.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.